Hi, everybody. I really tied a large whip to my back by presenting this grand unified theory of CRO. It's a killer. How am I going to pull that off? I'm not really sure. And it's at the end of the day, this is going to be tough. But I'll give my best shot. So this is me. I founded a company called Conversionista, similar to Pep's company. It's an agency. We work in Sweden. We're 25 people. And this is what I do most of the day now that my business has grown. I go around and I teach and I train digital management teams, mostly in Scandinavia, but also in Europe, about how to get on with optimization. So this is me. I'm a teacher. But I also have a confession to make. I'm a thief, because most of the stuff that I teach people, I have stolen from somebody else. So I haven't come up with a single idea that is my own in the 6 years that I've been doing this. And the problem with this stealing thief approach is that I have so many things. And after one of these sessions, people will typically tell me that this is so great, John. You gave me all these ideas and all these things, but now I'm a little bit unsure of when do I use the scarcity versus the social proof and the Google Analytics and those things. So they can't make sense of it. So I really try to make an effort to try to wrap all these things into one model, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Probably you are also a little bit confused with this CRO Jedi Masters here, who's been teaching you this stuff now over 2 days, because they gave you this toolbox, and you don't know which tool to use. And now Angie, she's wondering why she got to be Yoda, but I'm going to take that later in the bar with you. So you got this toolbox, and you don't know which one to use. And so we put together something we call the optimization wheel. And I'm going to try to explain this to you over the next 25 minutes. So basically, I'm going to try to answer 3 questions. I got all this persuasion stuff, but when do I apply what? I got all this data, but what data do I really need? And thirdly, I got all these pieces, but how do they fit? So let's see if I pull it off or not. And first of all, I want to quote this guy. You probably heard it. It's George E.P. Box. He said this one thing. Essentially, all models are wrong, but some are useful. He's known for nothing else. I don't know who the guy is, but if you Google it, this is what he did, So what I want to say here is that you can probably hack this, what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, Jan, that's not true because I made this test. And it's, of course, it doesn't always work. But the alternative is like, our model is, it depends. So we don't have a model. So that's just the disclaimer there. So this is where most people start. They start with hypotheses, testing ideas. Just like Steven was saying, they start with the testing in the beginning, in the top. And basically, people, we need a new responsive design. We need a chat function. We need we need one of those mega drop-down menus. So people, they go on and they develop these, and they jump from one development project to another, and they talk about themselves as innovators and creative people and so on. So I'm thinking, like, what is it that we need in a model in addition to the hypothesis? Well, it must be data, right? So we are now data-driven. That's great. So we look at our hypothesis, we create hypotheses out of data, and our hypothesis generates new data. So then, of course, if you read these books, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries or Great by Choice by Jim Collins, they are talking about these 2 concepts called validated learnings or empirical validation. So as Jim Collins says, fire bullets, then cannonballs. Plainer English for this. So the third component you need is, of course, experiments. So now you got the loop. These are the outcomes of whatever it is you're doing. You have hypotheses which you put into experiments, and experiments generates data, which from the data you can create new hypotheses. But we're not really done here yet, because this is like the optimization wheel. That's the rubber, but you also need the spokes that drive the wheel forward, and that is what's missing here. So the thing that connects data to hypotheses is behavioral insights, behavioral analysis. So this is all the Roger Dooley, Bart Schutz kind of stuff up there, where you're actually looking at your data with the glasses of the psychologist, so you can create hypotheses. And then, out of the hypothesis, you also, not everything, or not all your hypothesis is test-worthy. So you need to have a planning and prioritization structure, and that we already heard about from the French team, how you do your planning and prioritization. And thirdly, the third part that you need research and analytics. Because out of your experience, you need to figure out what is the real data, what is the data we really need to get out of our experiments. We often find, when we work, we go to try to answer this question at the top, why people are not converting and so on, and we are looking at the data, and one of the first things that we notice is that there's so much data at the clients, but they don't have the right data. They don't have the right data to answer why people don't convert. So we have to back the wheel up and go down into research analytics and to get the actual data that we need. This is very close, if I'm not standing in the way, I stand here in the middle, to the lean startup model, which you have here, and this optimization wheel. But what I found out when I work with startups and other companies is that people use the lean startup model as a source of inspiration of how to work in an agile way, but they are not actually working with the lean startup model. They use it as an idea. But they never sell. We are now in the measure phase to generate data. Oh, we are in the learn part of it. They don't work like that. So what I try to do, I try to make this more concrete and adapt it to the business that we in this room are in. And when we do these, the questions that we are trying to answer, when we develop things, you don't see that in the back, but I tell you here at the bottom, it says how. So we are good at telling how we build things. But the question that we also need to answer is the what question. What goes on our website? But then there's this famous quote from Web Analytics 2.0 by Avinash Kaushik that he said that Web Analytics is great at the what, but not at the why. So the upper part answers the why question, which gives us the answer to what instead. So these are the questions that this wheel is supposed to answer. So now I'll try to, you can actually, I'm going to back up. You can think about this wheel as you can kind of double click each of these different parts and expand it and see what's going on in each of the different parts. So I don't have the time to do that for the whole wheel in my 30 minutes, so I'm just going to focus on a few detailed views on this. Let's take the top one. I got all this persuasion stuff, but when do I apply what? Let's try to answer that. So I call this the first law of conversion. I kind of reformulated what Brian Eisenberg said like 300 years ago, and I call it this: conversion happens when your and your visitor goal meet. So you need to strike this balance between your goals and the visitor goals. And we also heard about the persuasion slide, and we saw the BJ Fogg model here yesterday. So these both then talk about motivating the user, reducing friction. So there are two levers: motivating and reducing friction. And so if I got to rewrite this book, if I got to be this famous writing book, I would call it, by John Ekman, it's called There's a Time for Persuasion, and there's a time to just kick back and watch the conversion happen. So I'm going to illustrate this with an example, and I want to give out a big thanks to Bart Schutz, who sat down with me in a bar at some conversion conference and helped me develop the thinking around this project. We were working with one of the major car rental agencies, not this particular one, but one of the ones you'll find at the airport here in Austin. And they had this starting page. It's good that it's in Sweden because you don't really understand what it is, but you can actually just see what they're trying to do here. So let me give you an example. I was in the Alps with my family a couple of weeks ago. I was flying down to Milano Linate Airport. I was going to be there 6 o'clock on a Friday evening. So I'm coming to this site, and the only thing I can think about is I'm going to be there at 6. I need about half an hour to get through with the luggage. I got 4 pairs of skis, and I also need snow chains, and I got 4 people who need that kind of shit. So I'm really task-focused here. But Europcar, they think that the best way that they can serve this task-focused stage I'm in is by showing images of shiny, happy people and prizes and campaigns and things like that. So they think that's how we motivate John at this stage when he's arriving at this page. But then if I type the stuff in at the top here, I arrive at this page, another one, not the one we work with, but they all look the same. So, oh, there's a car. I'm good. I booked the flight tickets and the cottage and everything, and there's also cars available. I'm saved. But now they can start persuading me. This is the place where they can say, John, get a little extra leg room. You know, bulky luggage, this is the one you need. But this looks like a mail order catalog from the 20s, right? So at the place before where they should just take a step back and let me do whatever I came for, they're trying to persuade me. And at this place, where they could persuade me, they're doing nothing of that kind. So at every situation, you always need to think about is it a time to persuade, or is it time to just kick back and watch the conversion happen? So what we try to do with these two like meta categories of increasing motivation and reducing friction, we try to group all the persuasion techniques into 6 categories which fit into these two themes of motivation and friction. And we put it around the 6 questions a visitor will ask when they come to a website. And the first thing is relevance. Am I in the right place? I'm looking for windshield wipers replacements for my car. Do the site sell auto parts at all? That's the only question I need to answer. And once they know they're in the right place, they need to know what's in it for me, what's the value for me in this site. They also need to figure out, can I trust them? And they also need to understand, once these 3 first ones are checked off, they need to understand, what can I do now? What is the action? Which thing can I click here? And then the 5th question is, how hard will this be? And the 6th question is, if I do this now, what if this and that happen? And this looks like these two, trust and assurance, they're both like kind of security. But as we listened yesterday about the system 1, system 2 behavior, what you need to understand is that trust is system 1 security. It's like in a blink of a part of a second, does this look trustworthy? Assurance, that's system 2 security. If I actually do this purchase, will I be safe? Does it come with all the warranties and things that I need? So the top 4 ones are about increasing motivation, and the 2 lower ones are about reducing friction. So, and then when do we apply this? That's the question I was trying to answer. Well, so what we've done that we constructed a generic funnel, because people ask us about funnels. So what is my funnel like? And I try to help people do this on their own. So I try to give them a model they can use. And we found that roughly, and it also resonates with with this dashboard funnel that Bart Schutz and Online Dialogue presented. People typically go through these stages. The exploration stage, I'm going to a wedding. Maybe I should get something new to wear. They're open for newer ideas. They're also called browsers in the e-commerce setting sometimes. Then they go to the evaluation phase. After that, the commitment phase. And finally, the confirmation phase, where it's like they want to overcome what's called the buyer's remorse. Did I really make the right choice here? It looks a little big here, but maybe it's okay. So, and then conversion people like us, we're often criticized for being too focused on the conversion, like a big button, hit it, and you start your free trial. But we don't think about what happens after. So therefore, I turned this funnel into a loop. So the funnel now became a loop with exploration, evaluation, commitment, and confirmation. And the nice part about this, when you add your referral stage to the last part of the loop, this part shows you what I call the acquisition gap. So the better you are at keeping your customers all the way through the funnel, you're adding the referral loop, and then the gap you have here, that shows you how much new people you need to acquire to get your business going. Finally, what we have found out in our work, and we see that in the beginning of the journey, you have to work with increasing motivation. And at the end of the journey, you need to work more heavily with reducing friction. And I think that was the problem with car rental examples, because I was already in the evaluation phase, getting close to commitment, and they were like, oh, John, you need some extra motivation here. No, you just need to reduce the friction, because I'm really close to what I thought I could achieve. And then we mapped out these 6 factors around this wheel. This is like cognitive overload for you right now at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So don't pay any attention to this right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples. My idea with this is that when you're in the evaluation phase, you just need to check off which are the factors that I need to be working on in the evaluation phase. When I'm in the commitment phase, I need to work with these. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. So we created this card for each of the phases. So when it comes to relevance, relevance plays out in the exploration and the evaluation phase. And here I list the 4 factors that are the most important persuasion techniques when it comes to relevance. I'm not going to go through all this. You're going to fall asleep. You're going to hate me for it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you one example, but I created quite a long PDF which contains all the technique, which just maps out all this stuff in detail, and I'm going to give you a link afterwards where you can get it. So if you are looking at, here's one of the persuasion techniques for relevance. It's called implicit codes. This is Baby Björn, one of our clients. They're like the global leader in these harnesses that you have for your kids. Maybe, I think they're big here in the US as well. Maybe a few of you have bought them. So now I was blah, 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 blah for like 10, 20 seconds, which is a lot more a user will give your website 4 to 5 seconds, you know, before they decide to stay or leave. So I'm asking you now, was this a web shop or not? Like, they produce these harnesses, but do they sell them on their own site? Was it a web shop or was it not a web shop? You have no idea, right? Because this page has all the explicit codes of a web shop, and they're all textual. You have a shopping cart, you have text that says it is a web shop, but they lack the implicit codes of what a web shop looks like. So you need to work with the implicit codes for what a site within your category should look like. Here's another example, of Norona. It's a Norwegian company. Is this a web shop? Here's Octrix, one of their competitors. Is this a web shop? It is, right? But they're actually both web shops. So, but this one doesn't work. This is one of our clients. I hate that. But they don't work with implicit codes. Yeah, because they had another design agency, which, you know, blah, blah, blah. So when you're coming, let's look at the trust. The trust plays out in the first phase of the journey. Here are the different techniques that you can use. They're all available in the PDF. Value. What I try to do with value, I try to, because we're talking about these scarcity and urgency tactics, I try to break down value into what I call positive value, which is a promise, and a negative value, which is a threat, like scarcity and urgency. So they're both in the category of value. So I'm just going to look at the value proposition. This is the example I always use for a good value proposition. This is the former website of ConversionXL called Marketech. It says, we will make you tons more money. That's a great value proposal. But so they went all in for value here, because I think this on the sacrifice of relevance, I think. Because if you don't know what Marketech does, maybe they are architects, or maybe they build stairwells, or I don't know. So they went all in for value. It's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a great example. They decided on one of the persuasion techniques, and they went for it, right? So action. Basically, the answer to the question, what can I do now on the website? We think that's really, really obvious. But for a lot of users, they don't understand, what is it that I should do next? And I think the most important word here, I think somebody mentioned this word, visual hierarchy. I don't know if you are you using this type of words when you're working? Visual hierarchy. Yeah, a lot of people are nodding. I think it's in Scandinavia then, they don't understand this kind of stuff. But basically the visual hierarchy, it tells you, by creating a hierarchy, you're telling the user what is important on this page. And these are two customers that we work with. It's one of these paywalls. You try to read an article, you get this in your face. And this has 4 grayish options, and this one has 2. One is big and yellow, one is small. And they're actually doing the same thing, but it's a flat and a prioritized visual hierarchy. Finally, no, not finally, but fourthly, ease plays out heavily at the end of the funnel. And then you have transactional assurance. I want to give credit to Andre Morris of WebArts, who helped me develop the thinking around this, because he says a car salesman, he knows that he's getting a deal when the customer starts asking questions about the warranty, the service, the repairs, and all those things that are not related to the car, but to the risk of making the wrong choice when buying that car. Right. So that was what I want to say with that. That was too much for you to digest. So if you think it has some bearing to whatever you're doing, download the PDF. I'm going to give you the link afterwards. So the second part is, I got all this data, but what data do I really need? And now we made it down to this part of the optimization wheel. So how do we make sure that we get the right data out of our experiments? And now I'm going to turn to one of the cases that we did with Spotify Premium. We did a mobile test on the page we upgrade from free to premium here in the US. So this is like a really, really important page for Spotify. It's their biggest market, and this is the only place they start making money. So we looked in Google Analytics. We saw that there was a huge drop-off on this page. But we didn't know why. Of course, we had our ideas about it. So we did one of these exit surveys where we've seen a couple of examples of them. And the main reason stated why people weren't proceeding here was that they said, I don't want to leave my credit card details for something that is free. So it was kind of a I don't know if I can say this. I can say this word. It was mind-boggling for the users at this stage. It's free. Like, how can I don't understand this. So what we made then, we made a little blue box that helped explaining why we need a credit card. And we tried to use the copywriting to explain it in 3 different ways, even though behind the scenes it's the same thing. And we A/B tested this. It was an ABCD test because there was also an original variation. The boring thing about this case result is that Spotify don't let us present any data here. But the 2 middle versions, this one, blame the record companies, actually won. And it's the one that's closest to the truth, because they can't give out they can't start a subscription if they don't have the credit card, because Warner Brothers and all those are going to go bananas if they do. So what I want to say with this is that when we started to do this, when we were looking at this, you can imagine that Spotify has a lot of data, but they didn't have the data about why people were leaving at this stage. So we had to find another way of harvesting that data. So we had the right data to base our hypothesis on. So that's why this part of the wheel is important when you're actually going out and proactively looking at what is the data that we are going to base our experiments on. This part down here. Finally, I got all these pieces, but how do they fit? Well, now we're coming to the lower part of testing at the bottom. So this is what a lot of people do. You've probably seen this. Maybe you've done it yourself. I want to get started with testing. I'll just take my shotgun and start firing tests all over the place. Unfortunately, it happens a lot to us. So we get called in. And what I'm trying to say with this matrix is what we are seeing when people try to get out of shotgun testing, they often aim for testing velocity. So they want a well-oiled machinery. And we call that, the downside, when you only do that, we call that alibi testing. Alibi testing is like the CEO, he calls you like, oh, I read about this thing called A/B testing. Are we doing it in our company? And yeah, oh, that's good, great, perfect, I'm off to the golf course. So that is alibi testing. You're going through the motions, you're processing garbage at high velocity, so it's garbage in, garbage out. And the other thing that also can happen, we call it one-hit wonder testing, because you have strong and consequent hypothesis, you have a good win rate, but it depends on local heroes here and there, and you can't really scale it within your organization. So the remedy to this is what we call double loop testing, because the other ones, they're going to get you into what we call the testing blues, which is like, no, it's not for us. It's like, we know that these people tried it, but really it doesn't really work at this company, things like that. So then how does that fit into this model? Well, let's say you double-click the experiment phase here. Well, there's a new loop here that talks about how you design your test, how you implement them, how you deploy, monitor, and how you follow up. So this is your perfect, well-oiled machinery down there. But it's not enough, because what we're trying to say is that you need to do double-loop testing, where you are grinding away down here at the bottom, but every now and then you need to revisit the upper loop to understand your instrumentation. What is the data we're trying to get out of this? What do we need to rethink how we think our users look at this, so we can create new hypotheses, and maybe we need to rewrite the backlog so we get based on our new findings and so on. So you need to do both these things. And I'm going to try to finish by showing it in numbers. So we have something on if you see the link here, apps.conversionista.se, we have what we call a visual test duration calculator. There are other types of these calculators. They're more powerful, but I think the power the power of this one, it visualizes what happens when the quality of your hypothesis drops. Because what you can see here, when you go down here towards 9.75%, you can see the test duration takes off like a rocket. So if your hypotheses are not so strong, that's going to drive the test duration. But even worse, let's look at this matrix that I created. Do the maths about this. I based this on 3,000 daily visitors and a 5% baseline conversion rate, because Pep told me, if I give an example, what number should I use? And he said 3,000 daily visitors. It's like the average for the people in the room. Don't know if it's true. It's me and Pep guessing. So if the beginner here gets an uplift of 5%, average Joe gets 10, somewhere in between there is typically what conversion experts do. And if you're stellar, you can average 20. That's amazing. So the testing time in the first case is 138 days to get a significant result. In the middle, 35 days, and at the lower one, 9 days. So you can run 3, 10, and 40 tests per year. Let's say if you only have 3,000 visitors a day and you need to test against the final conversion, usually you can only run one test at a time. If you're measuring toward the final conversion, it's hard to do parallel tests towards the same conversion goal. A lot of time you get to get into technical problems. So now if you're looking at the compound uplift of these numbers, that is basically, in the first case, it's 105 to the power of 3, and then 1.10 at the power of 10, and so on. You're getting these numbers. The compound uplift, if you're stacking these tests up on top of each other, is 16%, 250%, and 150,000%. So, of course, you realize that you can't put the tests on top. I mean, it's like a theoretical discussion, but I want to show you the power of having good hypothesis, which cuts the test duration so that you can start new tests, and the new test will have a higher uplift if you're good at creating your hypothesis. So I think the reason I created this slide, I want you to take photos of it or download it or whatever and show it to your boss. Because when your boss is saying, no, we're going to go for the well-oiled machinery, it's like, we got this, I'm buying this new software. It's really expensive, but it's really going to do it for us. Or the other way around. We have good people here, but they can, figure out the tech stuff themselves. You need to do both, because both will get you to the 250, somewhere between the 250 and 150,000% uplift. And what I tried to do, I tried to show you how this model talks about the how, the what is going on my website. Why is it happening, and what can I do instead? And I try to answer these 3 questions of, I got all this persuasion stuff, but when do I apply what? Please download the PDF if you want to. I got all this data, but what data do I really need? Do I have to be like Spotify and to go to look for additional data in order to create my tests? And thirdly, I got all these pieces, but how do they fit? Well, look at the double loop testing and see the power of that. And here's the download link. It's conversionista.se cxl-live 2016. I will ask you for your email address when you do this. I don't have any business in the US. I'm not going to spam you. The only reason I'm asking for it is I want to email you and say, what did you think about it? Was there, is there something I can improve? Is this useful at all? Things like that. So please help me with that. And here's my last slide. This is me in Whistler after I went to the Opticon. It's a couple of hours before they hauled me into the emergency ward at the hospital. Basically, I like mountain biking, and I'm staying over the weekend, so if there's anybody who would like to do some mountain biking with me, email me at john@conversionista.se. I'm going to try to find some trails around here or something like that. And that's all I got for today. I thank you very much for, most of you had your eyes open for most of the time, and I truly appreciate that. I know it's a really, really tough topic, but that was what I thought I could contribute with here, because when I do these trainings, I realize that people get so inspired, but if they don't understand how to use all these parts themselves, they're just going to be like consultancy suckers and come back to me. They can't execute it on their own. And I want this thing to scale, so I want more people to be able to work with it on their own. And I hope that I was able to deliver some of that to you today. Thank you very much.